deep, meditative, floaty, kind of wavy ASMR films is what I'm talking about today. A very common genre, obviously. These are movies that kind of, they take their time, you know, they explore big concepts and you have to kind of extrapolate your own ideas from them. They have beautiful, striking cinematography. I just like the idea of kind of using film to pull yourself out of the information overload matrix a little bit and use it as kind of like a meditation practice where you just, you know, commit to focusing your attention on this piece of art that may be difficult. Like, they're not difficult, these are really accessible, but compared to the kind of short attention span things we see this day, like even obviously myself, I'm definitely not immune. I'll find myself reaching for my phone, but just trying to really like be in the present moment and let this film kind of entrance you. And these are the ones that do that really well. My partner saw this list and he was like, oh yeah, I love those movies before I fell asleep in them. So they're kind of sleepy, but like explore big ideas, and a lot of them have like amazing premises and stuff. So I myself don't get like proper ASMR tingles, so I'm sorry if this is misleading, but I've checked with a friend and a lot of these fit the bill, I think. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you agree, you don't agree, if they're actually ASMR-y, but you know, I get the feeling of like being relaxed and kind of like the sensation of well-being, and yeah, so these are those, but in an arty, kind of dark way sometimes. I think Terrence Malick is sort of the, you know, the granddaddy of this genre. And I read this on No Film School about Malick. The camera is free to move, look, and perceive as if the audience was a curious angel floating through the scene. So that sounds nice, obviously. That's kind of a defining trait of this genre, I would say. Voyage of Time is not really a narrative film. It's more of a short mixed media documentary, or at least the 40-minute version that I saw, which was narrated by Brad Pitt. It's on Mubi at the moment. The 90-minute Cate Blanchett narrated one sounds good, but I feel like it could be maybe a little bit too long. This was feeling not stretched, it was like the perfect amount, but double that would be a lot. So yeah, it's a celebration of the universe and the cosmos and life and, you know, the everything since the beginning of time, which is obviously fascinating stuff. The shots are amazing. They are painstakingly composed, and if you love like earthy tones and stuff, I mean, everything's an earthy tone on Earth. It's not like perfect by any means. I'd say the narration is a little bit boring, on the nose, somber. Try to watch it, you know, as the sun is setting, on the biggest screen you possibly have, and a really good sound system. Watch it as the night descends. The next movie is The Green Knight. I was really surprised that I really liked this movie. I'm not really into King Arthur-y things in general, but this is directed by David Lowery, who also directed A Ghost Story, which when I watched was pretty blown away. But here, King Arthur's nephew, played by Dev Patel, takes on a challenge set by the Green Knight, who is this kind of weird, mysterious giant creature, and he goes on a quest, and there's quirky characters and there's beautiful locations, and all along the way he's kind of confronting the ideas of death and honor and masculinity and just like what one will do to prove themselves in a world where that is required. So pretty relatable themes. It's very like dark and mythical and surreal, and puts you in this like dream state, but it's a little bit of a nightmare, but Not scary at all, just really a bit of a fever lucid dream, which is an interesting thing for a filmmaker to do, to put their viewer in that position, right? But there's also like Dev Patel in it. And there's a scene at the very start, he jumps into frame with his sword and it's like shot from below, and he knows he's hot, we know he's hot. The director must have known that shot would kill. Dev Patel thirst trap this film for sure. Next one is Taste of Cherry by Abbas Kiarostami, who is so underrated in my eyes. No one I know at least talks about him. And he's an Iranian director. He was big in like the Iranian new wave cinema movements. He said in an interview that he likes movies that lull him to sleep in the cinema but keep him up at night later on, which I think is a very good way to possibly describe this genre. A lot of his movies are like that, but Taste of Cherry is, I guess, one of his kind of defining works. And trigger warning here for suicidal ideation, but it's not an intense film at all. It explores that idea in a very languid, unusual setting. So a man is driving around Iran and he's looking for someone to do a job for him. It's a tough job that most people are confronted by. That's kind of the whole premise, and the long meandering takes and the conversations that he has with people allow you to really reflect on the ideas that are like being put forward. And there's just some beautiful, beautiful shots, especially the one of his shadow and the dust is kind of falling over it, and it's just so like symbolic but simple at the same time. Yeah, it's a haunting movie, but it's definitely worth a watch. The next one is Cameraperson, and this is a really interesting film. I've never seen anything like it. It's quite experimental, but not inaccessible at all. You'd kind of just have to like surrender to watching something you might not be used to, and I guess leaving behind your conditioning of what a film is, which makes it sound so crazy, but it's essentially takes footage shot by Kirsten Johnson over the course of her professional life, and she is a documentarian. She goes into war-torn countries and shoots really intense situations, but it's a mixture of that with her personal life as well. So you never really see her. You see her a little bit, but it's like through the lens of her camera, which is obviously incredibly interesting as a filmmaker and really makes you question the role that we play as storytellers and the ethics behind that. You know, like what is okay to shoot, what is okay to show, what is okay to edit. Because as soon as you edit two shots together, no matter how seemingly disparate they are, they become intertwined and they say something about each other, they say something about the story or even the world we live in. So every cut is a decision, and it makes it quite easy to manipulate people in that way. So you have to think about that, especially if you're a documentarian and trying to showcase some sort of truth or reality. So yeah, that's what's really interesting about it, is all these shots come together to kind of say something about Johnson as a person, but also the world that we live in, and you have to kind of make your own judgments, and it's just really well done. So next up is Burning, directed by Chang-dong. It's adapted from a short story by Haruki Murakami, and I think it's just a really amazing translation of the kind of enigmatic, like weird kind of chaos of just not knowing what the fuck is going on in one of his novels.
저한텐 세상이 수수께끼 같아요.
So the basic synopsis is Jung-soo is kind of this dopey, aspiring writer. He's lower middle class, and he meets a woman on the street who claims to have gone to school with him. She says that he was mean to her, but that he helped her out in a critical moment. And Jong-soo has no recollection of this, but their relationship kind of progresses from there. And he thinks he's in with a chance, and then she comes back from a trip and introduces him to her friend Ben, who's kind of a very well-traveled, worldly kind of intellectual who listens to jazz music, and Jong-soo is like confused by the relationship, and the whole thing kind of descends a little bit into madness, but in a subtle, very poetic way. And it kind of examines the idea of ownership. You know, do we ever have any right to feel ownership over another person, to be possessed by them in a way, and like feel like you want to possess them? And what can kind of happen as a result of that. And then also Korean cinema often seems to examine kind of the class divide, and it does it so here in a really interesting way. So yeah, the acting is great, the score is great, the cinematography is like super lush, and the plot is really intriguing and it keeps you guessing as well. So, directed by Salomé Jashi, this next one called Taming the Garden is another documentary film that kind of requires you to surrender all your preconceived notions of what a film should be. And that's not easy at all, but I think once you do, and if you allow yourself to be open to it, there's a lot to be gained. But this one is a really interesting premise to begin with, and it's like a fun one to talk about. It's based on a true story, and the Georgian ex-prime minister, who is now a billionaire, decided 6 years ago that he wanted to transport trees that were over 100 years old, magnificent, beautiful trees, across the Georgian country and replant them in his garden, which is crazy. The film shows the Georgian locals kind of coming to terms with it. So there's a lot of workers working to dig up the trees. There's a lot of families who are confused by the premise, but you know, they don't know how to feel because they're getting paid. It's creating work, it's creating jobs. And then there's obviously some that are just distraught by the idea of these beautiful trees being taken from their memory, from their property, from their lives. And some of the like characters and the conversations are so poignant, that you think it must be scripted, but I assume it's not. She's just managed to observe these amazing scenes. The shots are amazing. They're all kind of wide shots, so it's not like you get involved with the characters or anything for a long time. They're all kind of different scene vignettes, so you move on to the next family, the next workers, the next situation very quick. Well, not very quickly, quite slowly. So it's nothing like what you think a film will be, but in that way, it's incredible. You might have heard of it. Let me know if you have and you liked it. It's called Portrait of a Lady on Fire by Celine Sciamma, and she is just on a roll at the moment. I mean, I admire her career a lot, and her movies are amazing. So this one is about Marianne, a painter, who's sent to a remote island mansion where Heloise, the rich daughter of the house, I suppose, lives, and she's been commissioned to paint her so that the painting can be sent off to a nobleman and he can approve their marriage. Very patriarchy vibes, but Heloise does not want to be married off, and she has refused previous painters to even let her see her face. So Marianne is kind of sent in covertly, and she has to pretend to just be a friend and a companion and paint her from memory. So that's the setup of the film. Celine Sciamma has said that it is a portrait about the female gaze. So yeah, I mean, obviously importantly, it's directed by a woman, so the female gaze is coming through even from behind the lens, and the characters are all women. There's no real men except for in the peripherals, and obviously the kind of oppressive like world that they live in.
Ça fait des années que je rêve de faire ça. Mourir, courir.
The two main characters, they admire each other and they love each other and they lust after each other in very subtle but powerful and like creative ways. So it's very like feminine energy but powerful, not but powerful. Obviously feminine energy is powerful, but that's really well demonstrated here. I'm really liking these films that kind of take like modern style characters and ideas and set them in a period piece like 18th or 19th century. And of course, like in First Cow or Power of the Dog or these movies, there would be people who don't subscribe to the socially accepted ideals of like masculinity or femininity. Final movie we got there is called El Abrazo de la Serpiente. A little bit of Spanish going on. My mum is from Spain, so that helps. But shout out to my bro for recommending this one. Embrace of the Serpent is the third feature from the Colombian filmmaker Guerra. It's inspired by the true story of two German scientists who ventured into the Amazonian jungle in the early 20th century. And the film explores that in two different timelines, so two different scientists, and they're led by the same shaman. They're on a journey to find this kind of fictional plant called the yacruna. So I mean, anything kind of like jungly, I think the density of the jungle and the unknowableness is very intriguing to us outsiders, but obviously very like sacred and special to the indigenous people of the Amazon. So the director says that he worked with the indigenous people really closely to understand that reverence as much as possible and portray it in a respectful way. But the film obviously deals with colonialism and the impact of that in a really fucked up way. It's in black and white, which again, I've said this before, might be off-putting and was a little confusing to me because, you know, you'd just be so keen to kind of show off the lushness of the jungle. But he's done an interview where he talks about that decision, and it's really interesting. When I went there, I realized it was not going to be possible to portray the colors of the Amazon in a way that really conveys what that means to the indigenous people. They have over 50 different words for what we call green. I decided I was going to let the audience imagine that. When you see the world in this manner, there is not this idea that nature is green and man is something else. Every person, every animal, every drop of water, every fish, everything seems to be made of the same material. That is completely in line with the way that indigenous people see the world. If I had had to do the film in color, I would have preferred not to do the film at all. So that's amazing. And then another quote he said was, when I was doing research on the Amazon, I came upon the diaries and I thought there was so much similarity between what the explorers used to do, taking a leap into unknown territory, leaving everything behind and just going into it for years, to what happens when you make a film. You don't know what's going to happen, you don't know how it's going to come out, and you don't know how long it's going to take. So I strongly relate to that, and also to the scientists' hunger for knowledge and their curiosity. So I mean, that's a little, comparing filmmaking to exploring the Amazonian jungle is interesting, confident, but I think in this case, he's done it. The film is really innovative and unusual and thought-provoking. So hope you like it. I hope you enjoy taking the time to surrender to some of these films. And if you do, please let me know, because not many people will talk about these ones with me. So yeah, sound off in the comments. Bye. Really powerful. Burning, and it's an